The year was 1799. Now Tipu Sultan and British are preparing for final battle. The kingdom of Mysore stood at the edge of destiny. For over 2 decades, Tipu Sultan had fought the British East India Company with unshakable courage. His armies had defeated them, his strategies had confused them, and his roar had shaken their confidence. The British, the masters of deception and empire, had learned one truth: Tipu Sultan was not an ordinary ruler. He was a lion, fierce, unyielding, and intelligent. But this year was different. The British had grown tired of facing defeat after defeat from Tipu Sultan. This time, they wanted not just victory, they wanted revenge. They wanted the complete destruction of the Lion of Mysore. And so, they came prepared. General Harris led a massive army of more than 70,000 soldiers, joined by cannons, artillery, and a ruthless determination to end Tipu Sultan's reign forever. By their side marched the armies of the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Marhattas, former allies of Tipu, who had now betrayed him for promises of British wealth and favor. Allies who once fought beside him now raised their swords against him. But Tipu Sultan was no stranger to betrayal. His answer was simple: trust in Allah, fight with honor, die with dignity. Inside the mighty walls of Srirangapatna, his capital, the Sultan moved among his people. He was not a ruler who hid behind luxury or distance. He was there in the streets, reassuring mothers who held their children close. He was there in the barracks, speaking to soldiers who sharpened their swords. He was there in the mosques, bowing in prayer, asking Allah for strength in the days to come. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in blood red, Tipu stood before his commanders. His voice was steady, his eyes fierce. "My friends, the storm is upon us. The British think they can break us with their numbers, but they forget courage is not counted in numbers. Courage is measured in hearts. We may be few, but our courage will echo in history forever." The soldiers roared back, their voices filling the night. "Allahu Akbar, long live Tipu Sultan." That night, families gathered in silence. Mothers told their children stories of their sultan's bravery. Old men whispered prayers. Young men tightened their grips on their spears. The city was alive with fear, but also with faith. A faith to fight in the name of Allah and protect their land from evil invaders. Outside the walls, the British encamped. Their fires lit up the horizon. Their cannons gleamed under the moonlight. The jungle echoed with the sounds of their drums. The hunters had arrived. But within the fort, the hunted had turned into a lion waiting for his chance to strike. And so, the stage was set. A city under siege, an empire closing in. But what happens when the roar of a lion meets the thunder of an empire? The battle for Srirangapatna was about to begin. The British wasted no time. By April 1799, their massive army had surrounded Srirangapatna. It was a sight to behold tens of thousands of troops, war elephants carrying supplies, endless rows of cannons, and banners fluttering proudly under the Union Jack. The people inside the fort could hear the enemy long before they saw them. The jungle trembled with the sound of marching boots. The rivers carried the cries of soldiers. And when the first cannon fired, the very earth of Mysore shook. But behind the walls, Tipu Sultan stood tall. He inspected the defenses himself, the cannon placements, the fortified gates, the trenches dug deep. Soldiers straightened their backs when they saw him, for their sultan was not a man who ruled from luxury. He ruled from the battlefield. He climbed the fort walls and looked out at the endless sea of enemies. One of his generals, nervous, whispered, "Sultan, they are too many." Tipu smiled and replied, "Let them come. They fight for greed. We fight for faith and freedom. Numbers will not save them." The first days of battle were a storm. The British rained cannon fire on the walls of Srirangapatna. Explosions lit the sky. Stones crumbled. Dust filled the air. Yet, every time a section of wall was struck, Tipu's men repaired it under his orders, sometimes while bullets whizzed past their ears. The British tried to storm the gates, but Tipu's elephants charged and scattered them. Arrows rained down, muskets fired from the ramparts. And through it all, the Sultan himself could be seen, moving from one end of the fort to another, shouting encouragement, calming the fearful, and igniting the brave. The defenders chanted his name, "Allahu Akbar. Long live Tipu Sultan." Days turned into nights, nights into weeks. The fort stood unbroken. The British were growing frustrated. They cannot afford another defeat, no matter what it takes. Tipu Sultan knew his enemies were powerful, but he also knew something more dangerous, and that was betrayal. At the end, the traitors played cruel role in this war and turned the situation in favor of British forces. Among the shadows of Srirangapatna, there were traitors, greedy men who saw British gold as more valuable than their sultan's honor. Spies slipped through the city, passing secret maps and whispers to the British commanders. One such map showed a hidden weakness, a stretch of the fort wall not as strong as the rest. The British knew now where to hit and get inside the fort. On the night of May 3rd, British cannons roared with new intensity. Their target was that weak section. Stone after stone fell until cracks spread like veins of doom. By dawn on May 4th, a gaping hole had been torn into the mighty walls of Srirangapatna. The British saw their chance. General Harris gave the order. Thousands of red-coated soldiers charged forward, storming through the breach like a raging river. Inside, the city turned to chaos. Mothers clutched their children, elders cried out prayers, and soldiers scrambled to positions. The roar of cannons mixed with the screams of battle. Tipu Sultan rushed to the breach, sword in hand, determined to hold it. He cut down enemies left and right. Blood stained his blade, but his spirit did not falter. Still, the tide was overwhelming. British soldiers kept pouring in. The defenders were outnumbered 10 to 1. The walls had fallen. The city was crumbling. But would the Lion of Mysore bow his head or roar one last time? Tipu Sultan was offered a choice. Some British officers, seeing his valor, shouted, "Sultan, surrender and live. We will spare your life." But Tipu Sultan's answer was swift and thunderous. Better to live one day as a lion than 1,000 years as a jackal. His words echoed through the fort, igniting his soldiers. They knew their sultan would never bow, never kneel, never surrender. With renewed fury, the defenders fought harder. Muskets fired, swords clashed, cannons thundered from the ramparts. Even women joined the fight, throwing stones and boiling oil upon the invaders. Children carried water to the wounded soldiers. And in the center of it all was Tipu Sultan. He was everywhere, on the walls, leading charges, in the streets, rallying men. His presence was like fire in the veins of his people. One soldier, gasping from his wounds, looked up at him and whispered, "Sultan, you are the shield of our land." Tipu lifted him up, saying firmly, "No, Allah is our shield. I am only his servant." The battle raged, hour after hour. Yet, despite their bravery, the defenders were being pushed back. The British numbers were endless. The streets of Srirangapatna were rivers of fire and blood. Buildings crumbled, smoke choked the air, and the cries of the dying filled the city. But still, Tipu Sultan fought. His sword flashed like lightning, cutting through enemies. His armor gleamed, stained with dust and blood. He was not just a ruler anymore, he was the very spirit of resistance. British soldiers, shocked at his ferocity, shouted, "That is the Sultan. Capture him alive." But capturing him alive was impossible. He fought like a whirlwind, his blade striking down anyone who dared come close. For every enemy that fell, 10 more replaced them. His companions fell around him, one by one. Yet, he did not retreat. Even when a musket ball struck his arm, he fought on. Even when a sword grazed his face, he did not flinch. His roar rose above the noise. "This is my land. This is my fight." Amidst the chaos, Tipu Sultan was struck. He fell, surrounded by enemies, his sword still in his hand. Even in his final moments, he tried to rise. He tried to swing his blade one more time, but fate had chosen its hour. When the British soldiers found his body, silence fell. Their victory tasted hollow. On May 4th, 1799, the Lion of Mysore breathed his last, but in that breath, he became immortal. Word of Tipu Sultan's death spread like wildfire. Across Mysore, across the Muslim world, people wept. The British had won the battle, but in truth, they had lost something greater. They had created a legend. To them, Tipu was a dangerous enemy. To his people, he was a protector. To Muslims around the world, he became a symbol of faith and defiance. Generations would remember Tipu Sultan, not just as a king, but as the lion who never bowed. Even today, centuries later, his name is spoken with reverence. Songs, poems, and histories all carry his roar through time. The moral lesson from Tipu Sultan's life was not just a story of war. It was a story of values, a story of faith, a story of standing firm even when the world turns against you. He teaches us that true courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to fight despite fear. He teaches us that honor is worth more than life itself. He teaches us that leaders are not those who hide, but those who bleed with their people and fight with them shoulder to shoulder. And above all, he teaches us that legacies are not written in comfort, they are written in sacrifice. Tipu Sultan once said, "A lion may die, but he never bows." And even today, his words roar through history, reminding us that courage, faith, and honor will always outlive fear, greed, and betrayal. And so, the tale of Tipu Sultan, the Lion of Mysore, comes to a close. But his roar will echo forever.